everybody, this is Sean, and I'm here for the first of our spotlight interviews that we're doing thanks to all of our Patreon backers. So all of you out there that are listening to the show, you are benefiting from our awesome Patreon supporters. And today, no better person to kick this off with than Patrick Nickell from Crash Games. Patrick, how you doing?
Good. That's quite a lead-in. I don't know that I can live up to that. No better person to kick it off with. Like, I don't know, maybe, the president of some country or, Chris Pratt, I think would definitely beat me as a better person.
Chris Pratt, he was really hard to pin down. So I'm sorry, but you're the backup after Chris Pratt.
Well, with abs like that, it is going to be hard to pin someone like him down.
Well, for us pudgy guys, I'm like, man, because he was a pudgy guy,
I know that was kind of endearing, when he was Andy Dwyer on Parks and Rec, particularly the earlier seasons, which I love Parks and Rec.
Great show.
One of my favorite shows of all time. And he was the pudgy guy to root for.
Yeah.
And then he got serious.
Yeah, so all we have to do is quit our jobs and get a personal trainer and a personal nutritionist and just do whatever they tell us to, and we're good.
I'm pretty sure abs like that are a full-time job.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, yeah, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. This is something we've been trying to set up for a while. And
the universe has conspired against us.
It really has. Or we could just say it's the holidays, I guess. When
it is a tough time
when push comes to shove. So what's interesting is you and I have a bit of a connection. We're both from, well, not from, but we both have lived in Tucson. Although I didn't know you when I was there. I was there from 2007 to 2010.
We could have been hanging out, man.
Yeah. What were you doing in that time period? Where were you hanging out or gaming
So I'm trying to think when I moved down, because I moved from Payson, Arizona to Phoenix in 2007. And then I think in 2008, we moved down to Tucson, and I was there from 2008 through 2010. And then we bought a house in Phoenix, and then in 2010 we moved back up to Phoenix. My wife.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. So there wasn't, as far as like board gaming, there wasn't a lot of places to game back then. Although from what I hear since I left, there's been a ton of board game shops that have opened.
Well, the Phoenix area and the Tucson area was pretty hot during that time period, but they didn't advertise well, right? But once figured out they were there, like there was Saga. And there's a good group of gamers down there. And at that time, Tasty Minstrel was still in Tucson.
Right.
And I was in Tucson, Crash Games. And at that point, too, the Fred McKenzie, who's Dave McKenzie's brother, was running some stuff for Clever Mojo Games. And then also, no, I wasn't running stuff for Crash Games till 2010. No, I take all that back. But Tasty Minstrel was doing stuff.
Right.
Yeah. I'm like, wait, when did I start this? So yeah, no, it was a bit of a stealthy scene, but then it kind of, blew up. And there were quite a bit of game stores. In fact, that's how I got my start and figured out how that I wanted to be a publisher was in 2009. I took a job with a game store that had 7 stores inside of Phoenix and Tucson, Game Days, but they went out of business in, I think, 2012.
Right. And we had talked. Game Days was actually my very first job when I was 16 years old.
Oh, are you kidding me?
Yeah. We talked about briefly at Dice Tower Con. Yeah, I worked for Game Days for a holiday season up at Paradise Valley Mall in Phoenix.
Oh, yeah. I was the manager at the Superstition Springs Mall. So we have some weird connections.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
That's super crazy. Yeah. So I kind of forget that I worked at Game Days, that like my first job was in a game store.
I don't know the previous owner. I know that the owner that was handling it when it went out of business knew nothing about board games, and she wore that as a badge of honor.
Wow.
And she had a lot of great people working around her. And I think that's what flourished the store. But I think eventually her not being willing to learn that affected her decisions, because she was the top decision maker, right? And how can you really make effective decisions? Like, she was making good financial decisions,
sure,
but you got to know what you're doing, right? I mean, you got to know at least a little bit, so that you can make the best decision. So it was really sad. A lot of people lost their jobs. Thankfully I had gotten out about a year and a half before that happened.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So
That's when Crash Games started.
So I was going to say that transitions then. So what made you decide to want to start a publishing company?
It was a crazy decision that was kind of a mixture of things. And so I have been involved in the gaming hobby since 1998. So quite a bit of time, over half my life now. And it was slim pickings back then. There wasn't much offerings. It was really difficult to get games. And so when I was working at Game Days, I have a degenerative disease in my knees that the cartilage is gone.
Oh, wow.
And so I was in a tough position where I went to the specialist, and he's like, "Hey, dude, you can't be on your feet 8 to 10 hours a day. You don't have any cartilage left." And I'm like, well, that's problematic because I'm a retail store manager.
Yeah, that's all retail right there.
Yeah. And then it was a really difficult position, and I need to choose my words here carefully, but I got the distinct impression that my employer wasn't willing to make accommodations for that, which I believe is a violation of the ADA. But I was left with a difficult decision of, having to mount a legal battle, which I knew would only in turn hurt my fellow coworkers, because
Sure.
if anything was going to happen, it would probably have shut down stores, And so I'm like, whatever, I'm going to not be negative about this. I don't want to go with that. I know that there's a surefire, case here, and injustices are a big thing to me. They're very important. If I see something that I feel shouldn't be happening, I have no trouble putting myself in harm's way to try to make it right. And so that was a pretty big, injustice for me. And just a quick little snap of a background is before I got into gaming, I was actually applying to go to law school.
Oh.
And so I had an insurance background, a lot of contract law experience, and so I knew that there was definitely a violation of the ADA, but I'm like, you know what? That's just not going to be positive for anybody involved. So I was like, hey, there's this brand new thing called Kickstarter. And at that point, I think Tasty Minstrel had funded Eminent Domain. Clever Mojo had funded Alien Frontiers, and Dice Hate Me had funded Carnival. So there wasn't many board game projects going. And I thought, hey, I'll take a stab at this. And so Michael Coe, who was a part of Crash Games with me for the first year of our business, he now has his own publishing company, Gameland Games, does the Tiny Epic series. We decided let's take a go at this, right? And so he was doing it part-time. I was doing it full-time. My wife really believed in what I was doing, and I married an engineer, so I had that very, very fortunate ability to not have to bring in an income. We could live tight, and I could take a stab at a dream. So
cool. That's
what I did.
It's funny because I think we've talked about this at BGG Con too, because I'm an attorney, and my first field of practice was insurance defense. So we had lots of weird little connections.
I think we're basically brothers. Sean.
Yeah, could be.
At this point, we're just brothers from different mothers.
There you go. We're rocking the beards and everything. Yep. I had no idea that Michael Coe was with Crash Games initially.
Yeah, he started. He actually came into my retail store, and I ran a weekly game night where I brought, community has always been important to me. And that was one of the initiatives I took at my store was, having people come in. And even though we had a crazy limited space, was having a game night where they could come in and play games. And I actually did it when the store was in off hours and it was on my time. So we'd lock the doors and they'd come in and we'd play. And he had come in looking for advice because he had a game, Lords, Ladies, and Lizards, that was a game that he had come up with. And I said I would give him some advice and stuff that I knew and what little advice I had. And then we decided to take a go at it when I stopped with the game store. So it was just kind of a serendipitous, meeting, and And then we came out with Rise, which was Crash Games' first game. And then he was still with me when we published Lost Dutchman. And then we kind of had some different visions for the future. So at that point, I had, really wanted to go out and find other designs and sign them. I really felt that coming up with stuff in-house and developing it in-house was a really slow method. And there are certainly people that pull that off tremendously, like Ryan with Red Raven Games.
Sure.
And then he takes it to the next level because he's also the illustrator. And
right.
So, that's a really great model. If you have that guy is crazy talented. I think he's one of the most talented people in our industry because he's the trifecta, man. He's the designer, the publisher, and the illustrator. So he gets to save a lot of time and money, but that means slower, but it doesn't seem to be hurting him. And Michael had a lot of designs that he wanted to come out with on his own. And so, we made the difficult but necessary decision. We're like, hey, before this gets too messier than it already is, and before we're, too far along, in the company to really successfully go off and do our own things, let's do our own things. So at that point, kind of our deal was, hey, I will keep Crash Games, and then even though we had worked on Dungeon Heroes together, which is a fantastic 2-player dungeon delve game, I'll give you that. That can be Gameland Games' first game, and then we'll both just take a stab at it. And I'm very, very happy and thankful that he's had the success that he has, because that was probably my biggest fear. Was I would never want to split a company, one person succeed and the other not. I thought that would just build an insane level of resentment. So I'm very, very happy that he's had that success and that we've both been able to have our own successes and exist in this industry.
Very cool. So speaking of that, I guess what was the moment when you felt like, wow, Crash Games is successful? And no false modesty. We're all, when did you feel like you had made it?
That's a great question because we all gauge success differently, right? And for a lot of years, it was, oh, well, I've got, X games into market, so that's successful. Or, this person knows who I am, so that means I'm successful. So there's a lot of different scales. I think the moment that I felt it, I would say the first moment was when I was in my first year in Essen, and Bruno Feduti knew one of my games and wanted one of my games. That was probably the first moment. He wanted Council Verona. And when people ask me, well, what's your favorite game that you make? They're all my kids. They're all my babies. I can't pick a favorite, but Council Verona was the first game that I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got something special here. And I was super excited about it. And that's a whole, other story that I've told on several podcasts. But when I took that to Germany and Cosmos was interested in licensing it, and Yellow was interested in licensing it, and Ferdy was interested in licensing it, then I knew I'm like, okay, I feel successful. That was the first success, but that's not a financial success,
sure.
And that really is what the hardest part is to pull off in this industry. And I'm always, as forthcoming as I can be. And Crash Games has yet to be profitable. Mm-hmm. Right. And so that's difficult, the first time I felt somewhat financially successful, but it was a very brief moment once the books were reconciled, was when Yardmaster Pay Dirt and Yardmaster Express came out, and I had a distribution royalty check for $30,000. That was a pretty nice moment. And then I realized how much I had spent on shipping. And it wasn't profitable. And so that's why I always caution people. I'm like, hey, be careful. It's really easy to slip up.
Sure.
So I don't know. That's a hard question to answer, Because for many years in the beginning, it was kind of fake it till you make it, right? You find ways to be happy with what you've done, and you find, sort of achievements that you've accomplished, and that kind of spurs you further. But I don't know. I feel like enough people know about Crash Games. It was a big, big deal and a big moment to have Council of Verona on tabletop
Sure.
with Will Wheaton and Geek and Sundry. And that game has sold. I was my first reprint, and the second reprint is selling along quite well and is almost out. And so I know I'm going to have to print that a third time. So I think Council of Verona was the start of feeling successful for me, feeling like I had a game that what in the industry we call an evergreen, and that's a game that will always sell well. Games like, and I'm not putting myself in this category, but games like Catan and Ticket to Ride and Carcassonne, I really feel that Verona has that special nature to be in there one day when it gets the right packaging, when it gets the right exposure, and I think for a game like that was cooked from scratch from Michael Eskew, and me as a publisher in Tucson, that it's going to take some time to get it there. I think it can get there. So that to me, I guess, would be my long-winded answer of when I first felt successful is seeing what the possibility of Verona is.
Sure. And so let me just ask you this though: when you saw that press release from Tabletop, when they said, here's what we're going to be reviewing for season 2, what was the thought process? How'd you respond to that?
Well, I was on season 3.
Oh, was it 3?
Yeah, I was on season 3. I was informed only about 2 months ahead of time. And so that was problematic because I wasn't able to capitalize on having the game available. The game, the first edition, had just sold out of its 5,000 copy print run that I made, and there was going to be no way for me to have that available in distribution. So people ask about the tabletop effect, and I think I'm starting to see it now that the second edition is available, but I wonder how much momentum that I lost.
Sure.
So, I'm super thankful for it, but I just wasn't given enough lead time, and I'm not complaining. I will take it and gladly run with it. It's kind of the story of my life. Something's always got to happen sideways. And so it's made me pretty resilient and, have to just kind of go with the flow and make the best of the situation. But when they dropped that it was going to be on and that it premiered Christmas Day on 2014, like, oh man, just so happy, and that episode on YouTube has like almost, I think it's 750,000 views or something.
Yeah.
So, it's going to continue to, do its job. I think if it had been in stock widely and been available, then it would have sold better. But also, I heard that in season 3 that the sales weren't as good as season 2, which weren't as good as season 1. So it's a tricky thing, right? I think when it was out and it was new and it was a novelty, that people were snatching up games. But also, if you look at the quality of the games that were on season 1 and 2, like I can't compare Council of Verona to Small World or, Ticket to Ride. Those are insanely great games that will sell for decades and decades and decades. I think Verona can too, but there's a lot of mitigating factors as to why what performed the way that it did. But it was really neat with season 3 to see Geek and Sundry featuring games from indie publishers. That was really neat.
Yeah, that was really cool. I think what I love about Council of Verona is that it's a story that everyone knows. I mean, we're all forced to read Romeo and Juliet in high school at some point, and it's just such a pervasive story and just such a classic story at this point that when you're playing the game, everything makes sense, Mm. You want Romeo and Juliet together. Mercutio wants a balance because he's the one in the middle. Like, it's just I love how that gameplay feels, and I just think it's such a great concept.
Yeah, Michael Eskew did a phenomenal job with and it's been so long, I forget, what I specifically touched on it. I think I did a lot with like the balancing of the values. And I had some help from some other people in that regards too. But Michael Eskew did an amazing job at coming up with that, and having those thematic elements match the mechanisms in the game, right? It makes sense that Lord Montague wants the Montagues to control the council,
Right.
and Lord Capulet wants the exact same thing. It makes sense that Benvolio and Tybalt are kind of like assassins, and the nurse and Friar Lawrence kind of had a house affiliation, but they were kind of not really affiliated. So that it makes sense that they're both neutral and then their respective house, right? So that's not easy to do in a game, to make theme and mechanisms match so well. But that certainly is something that resonates with me, hence why I love Council of Verona so much, and games like Pay Dirt as well.
Yeah. Now we had done a giveaway with the copy that you provided, because I backed Council of Verona. I backed Wherefore Art Thou Romeo. I backed Council of Verona. So you sent us out some review copies. I'm like, well, I'm gonna pass this forward. And we had people write sonnets. I don't know if you saw those on the Guild.
Yeah, I saw a couple of those. I've been and I wish I had more time to read them all. I've been slammed with getting our next 3 games in, but I really love that you guys were running an awesome contest like that. And that's the neat thing about this industry. I love seeing people get really creative and seeing people do giveaways. Like that's a really neat thing.
I expected 0 sonnets, so I was impressed that we got any.
Come on, man, we are geeks. We are going, especially when you start giving us stuff for free. Like,
yeah.
We were probably already going to write the sonnet without something for free. That's who we are, and that's what we do. But you're going to throw in something into the pot and sweeten the deal? Psh, now I'm going to bring my A.
So a couple years ago, right, you moved to Seattle from Tucson or from Phoenix.
This year.
Oh, was it this year?
Yeah, in May 1, I became a Seattle resident.
What was the move, or what was the reason behind that move?
So there is an announcement coming pretty soon that I can't quite make, but people will certainly start to see some changes. I'll be really excited when I can make the formal announcement. But I can say that Crash Games isn't operating on Kickstarter anymore. Doing it the old-fashioned way, and I have really spent the last 7 months with a great team behind me, leveling up Crash Games and making some really positive changes that are going to take us to the next level. I don't know what the exact definition is. I don't know when you stop being an indie publisher. I don't know what that means. Does that mean that it's a part-time job? Because I've done this full-time for almost 5 years now. Does that mean that you're on Kickstarter? Does that mean that you're not in mass market stores? I don't know that there is a specified definition of what makes you an independent publisher or not. But I know that in 2016, starting right now, Crash Games has definitely elevated and moved into the next rung, if you will, as far as, hey, we're going to a systematic release schedule. You can expect 6 releases from us this upcoming year. None of them will be on Kickstarter. So that to me is a distinct leveling up. But I'll be really, really excited to make that announcement. It's a lot of dotting of I's and crossing of T's.
Sure. So that it sounds exciting, whatever that is. But I'm guessing, that the fact that Seattle's this like kind of gaming mecca in a lot of ways.
It is. There is a crazy amount of tabletop and digital, gaming companies up here. This is home to Wizards of the Coast,
right?
Loan Shark Games, Harebrained Schemes, the makers of Golem Arcana. There's a ton of little publishers up here, and digital companies like Bungie, right, that make some games like Destiny, and stuff like that. So it's just there's just a ton of companies up here, and it is certainly a hotbed of game companies. Designer Paul Peterson lives up here. Mike Selinker lives up here. Mike Elliott lives up here. It's a crazy, crazy awesome community up here with the best game stores I've ever seen in the country, like Mox Boarding House and Card Kingdom and Uncle's Games. It's spoiled. I'm spoiled up here, and I love it.
Yeah, I definitely want to get up there at some point, hang out with you, hang out with Suzanne.
Yep, she's up here. She's one of my normal gaming buddies. We get together regularly. In fact, I was just texting her this morning, and she already made gaming plans this weekend, Sean. So I will be not gaming with Suze this weekend. It's a no Suze weekend.
Well, you provided the copy of Fields of Arla when she was. I had asked her to come on like last minute because Alex couldn't do the podcast, and so she needed to play Fields of Arla. This was maybe like 5 months ago, 6 months ago. And she's like,
yeah, I taught her that, and I told her this game, the explanation is going to take about 45 minutes. There are a lot of spots to explain, and there's just too many for you not to know what they all do. Fantastic game, but a high barrier. But I think for that, if you get it going with another person that loves it as much as you do, man, it is all creatures big and small on steroids.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's fantastic. I love it. And I was the first person from the very talented Robert Searing to get his foam insert for Fields of Arle, which really needed it. Oh my gosh.
Oh, big time.
It was a hot mess.
I have one of his as well. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. That game yearned for an insert.
Hey everybody, the Dukes have created a Patreon account. This lets you support the Dukes of Dice podcast by pledging a small amount per episode we produce, as little as $1 per episode. Your support helps defray the cost of web and podcast hosting, review copies of games, and, with enough support, getting the Dukes to major conventions. There's some great benefits, including early access to episodes, shout-outs, and more. With enough support, you'll help us reach milestone goals, including YouTube Q&A sessions, Google Hangout sessions with industry insiders, and board game media personalities. Please consider supporting the Dukes of Dice podcast. You can check it out at patreon.com/Dukes of Dice. Thank you so much for your support. Game on!
So now that you're transitioning away from Kickstarter, can you even imagine what it'd be like to enter the Kickstarter market now? Like if you were just now starting Crash Games, how would that be different than it was back in 2010, 2009, 2010?
Yeah, 2010, 2011. Man, the people entering the market now have 100% of my sympathy and my empathy, because that has always been a fluid market, and it is an ever-changing market. And I have nothing but respect and admiration for guys like Jamie Stegmaier who are killing it, and my buddy Michael Coe, killing it with the Tiny Epic series on there. But it has become a very different market than when I first got on there, and I noticed the changes, and I have a unique perspective from having been on there for a stretch of time, and what it is now and what it was then is very, very different. I think it is very, very tough to make it on there now. As a brand new company, you better be coming with something amazing if you're going to pull it off. And I always tell people my entire life, I feel like I've been behind the 8 ball, right? A great idea, someone just came up with it. Oh, I think this would work really well. Someone just did it. So it's always been late to the game on things. And I was just in the nick of time with Kickstarter to where I finally feel like I wasn't behind the 8 ball on something. And without Kickstarter though, and it's such a roller coaster thing for me, because without Kickstarter, I don't have a company. I'm probably still selling, insurance or doing claims adjusting, or who knows what. I don't know. Maybe I'm a fry cook.
And so can we talk about Pirate Den? Because I think this is such a cool story, and I don't know how much you want to get into. I mean, the upside.
Pirate Den could be a whole stinking podcast.
I mean, because the happy side of it, the upside of it, your contribution is a great story. And I think that's out there. People kind of know about that, but obviously I want to spend some time talking about that. I don't know if you can kind of talk about what led up to that, all the unfortunate stuff that happened that led up to it.
Yeah, and I'll share as much as I can, because it really is a good story. And the thing that matters the most is that an awesome game that deserves to be in the market is in the market. And that's what it comes down to. It is a fantastically fun game that I first laid eyes on 2 years ago, over 2 years ago at Gamma Trade Show. And I was like, oh man, I wish that I was publishing this. This is so fantastic. Oh man, I really wish this was mine. And such a journey for it to be a Crash Games, game. And man, I don't even know where to start. I guess that's where it starts. It starts 2 years ago when I saw it at Gamma, and then I was a backer of the Kickstarter, and the Kickstarter funded, but the game wasn't going to get made. And I won't get into all of that. There are lawyers involved, and I don't want to say something that I shouldn't. But it came down to the fact that I had the opportunity to where my new team and I felt strongly about the game, and we wanted to make sure that that was a reality. And it really wasn't negotiable to me, and the other party, it wasn't either as well. But that was fine because that was a mutual agreement that the backers needed to be taken care of, that faith in our community needed to be restored. And so every single backer that got their copy, that was on Crash Games' dime. And that was a loss that we took of just accepting that, about 800 copies of the print run were going to go out to the community to make sure that was restored, that was made right. And now it's going into distribution. It's for sale on Amazon. We'll be demoing it at all of our upcoming conventions this year. And it really just is a great game of take that fits a very specific and very hard to fill, hole of a game that can be played by a non-gamer and a hardcore gamer alike and be enjoyed by that wide audience. That's a very hard game to make. Right?
No, absolutely.
You could take over to your aunt and uncle's house at Thanksgiving and them not know anything about games and be able to jump into it. And then somebody that's been in gaming 18 years to still be able to enjoy that game. That's not easy to achieve.
I find it interesting that it's kind of billed. You have it right there in the box that this is part of your family line. And I don't know if that's something that you're planning to continue. Or
it definitely is, but it's going to be very intentional decisions. And we actually have a game, the second game in that line coming out this April. And it's a game called Fish Frenzy, designed by Brett Gilbert of Elysium fame.
Yeah, one of our top games of this last year.
Yeah, and so I was really excited. He pitched me that at Essen Spiel this past year. And I guess a German publisher had been sitting on it because they couldn't get the game to fit into a specific sized box. They decided to pass on it. And thank you, Zoc. And I was able to then, sign the game. And I'm like, this is perfect for our family game line. It's perfect to come after Pirate Den. We want to put it in the same box. I've got the very, very talented Kwanchai Maria illustrating the game, and I'm actually working on the final files for it to submit. So yeah, it's a line that we plan on continuing, but every game in that line is going to be a game that specifically you could play with your non-gamer family or friends, but just because you're a gamer doesn't mean you won't enjoy it as well. So that is a line that I'm very, very excited about. And I'm excited about the possibilities of getting that line into mass market like Target and Walmart and Barnes & Noble.
Oh, yeah, that'd be cool. So I kind of want to take a look real quick about how you approach signing games. Because like you mentioned earlier, that's kind of what you do. You're not developing in-house as much or not designing in-house, but looking to sign designers. And that's a process that I haven't really been privy much to. And so I'm kind of interested to hear about that, and maybe the listeners are as well. But like if we look at a game like the one that you're working with Mike Fitzgerald on, because I was there for a bit of that, and so I got to kind of see that. I got to play his proto of that. And so I don't know if you can kind of walk us through that process.
So it's always kind of, it varies how I come across games that I end up signing. I will let people know right out of the gate that a blind submission in the mail is the worst possible way to get a game designed. And I really, really can't emphasize that enough, because I only have so much time in the day. And if I don't know you and I don't know your game, I've gotten game submissions in the mail with no contact info, just the game. And I'm like, I appreciate the time and the effort that they put into that, and obviously the cost, but that is the worst possible way to go about it. And Mike Fitzgerald was actually doing an interview for Ludology, at BGG Con about what publishers want to see from designers. So more often than not, how I come across games now are designers that I have somewhat of a relationship with, whether it be, hey, we just talk on Twitter, or hey, we've gotten together at conventions. But most of the games I come across now are from established designers that have games published under their belts. And I have a relationship with. There's not a shortage of that by any means. So, I still do development in-house that is done on every game. But the quality of the game submissions that I receive now and the quality that I got right out of the gate, we didn't get any out of the gate. Nobody knew who we were. That's kind of why we had to come up with stuff on our own, is to, you got to start somewhere. And so, most of the times I get together with designers at conventions and they're like, hey, can I make an appointment and show you a couple things? Absolutely. So that's kind of how that happens most of the time now.
And how quick is the turnaround on you making it a decision? Because it seemed like with this one with Mike, it was fairly quick.
Yeah, with Mike Fitzgerald, I mean, that was a no-brainer. First of all, anytime you have a designer that's, in my opinion, as big as he is, that to me, so it's kind of like a default scoring system, right? So
Okay.
If Matt Leacock came to me and said, I have a game, that's going to bump up 5 points right out of the gate, right? Okay. It's Matt Leacock.
Sure.
So how bad can the game be? And it's Matt Leacock. And if I haven't said enough, it's Matt Leacock. So putting that name on a box is going to sell X amount of copies. And I've had this discussion with my new team, and that's why Pandemic Legacy, it's got Rob Davio's name on there. It's got Matt Leacock's name on there. It's Pandemic. It's a Z-Man game. All four of those things add up to a score that mean you should print X amount of copies right out of the gate. So we were kind of having this pedantic argument of, and I'm not going to give you the value, Sean, so don't even try, of how many copies does Matt's name being on there? How many copies does Rob's name being on there sell? How many copies from just Pandemic fandom? How many copies because it's a Z-Man game? And all of those made for an incredibly high score. So I am not surprised to see it selling as well as it is.
Sure.
It's kind of a weird little formula you can do. So when you have a designer like Mike, and he's a very thoughtful designer.
Oh, absolutely.
Considerate. He came to me and he goes, I see the kind of games you make. I think this game belongs in your line. And when I play the game, you're spot on. It does belong in my line. And you designed it. And I love it. And I want to make it, And so the turnaround time on it, for his specific game, that'll be coming out in October. It'll be an Essen release. And so, but some other games like Fish Frenzy from Brett Gilbert, it was ready to go. It needed a couple minor development changes that we made, and then we just needed to get art on it. And so, that turnaround time, I signed it in October, and it's going to be published in April. That's 6 months.
Wow.
That's next to nothing. And then not having to use Kickstarter really helps cut that time period down.
Sure.
Because now I don't have to sell it twice. I don't have to sell it to a completely different audience and then sell it, to the normal audience, or I shouldn't say normal, but sell it to the distribution retail audience, right?
Yeah.
So the turnaround time on a game can be quite quick, depending upon how ready the game is to go to market. So Fish Frenzy was pretty much ready to go to market with Zoc, and I got it and was like, well, I think it could be improved in this ways, and my team thought it could be improved in a couple ways. So we did that, and we're like, let's do this. Let's get it to market. So it can be quick and it can be long too. There's games that I've had, for a couple years that haven't come out yet for various reasons. It's a tricky thing scheduling games. I don't think it can really be done. I made that mistake early in my career as Crash Games. I upset some designers, understandably, but I've always been honest with them and upfront as, hey, I screwed up here, and thankfully, we were able to heal from that and still remain friends and professional people moving forward. But, getting a game to market, whether you're using Kickstarter or not, is not an easy process.
Sure.
And so, you do the best you can, you put your best foot forward and you put your best games forward, and then you get to see whether they sell or not. It's a lot of time, work, effort, energy, and money for something that might not sell, right? You do everything you can to mitigate that risk, but in the end, it all comes down to people like it. Is it fun? Do they want to play it?
Now, with a game like Mike's, what are you anticipating in terms of development?
So Mike's game is really sound, mechanically. And I'm really, really excited by that. And he did some additional, play testing with groups of his, on the East Coast over the holiday. And I see very little that's going to need to be done developmentally. He's on it.
Yeah.
And I would expect that from a designer of his caliber, right? If he came to me with a half-baked game, I would be a little perplexed.
Sure.
And a little confused. The biggest challenge with Mike's game is going to be its theme or lack thereof.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so you've played the game, you know it. The game itself was inspired by his and I's love of cribbage.
Yeah. Big fan myself.
Yeah, I love cribbage. Cribbage would be a terrible game to try to put in the market, but he has made a streamlined version of it that just really, while it isn't cribbage at the same time, it's simply, inspired by. And so we've had a couple, ideas. I sent it off to a good friend of mine who I'll leave anonymous at this point, although he's kind of mentioned it on Twitter, so that's fine. Daryl Lauder has been playing it.
Okay.
And Daryl Lauder is a very, very talented graphic designer. He's responsible for, the layout and graphic design on Yardmaster, on Paydirt, and I knew that if somebody could nail it, that he would. And I knew that he was a fan of Mike Fitzgerald. And I also knew that if Daryl latched onto the game, that he would have some really neat ideas thematically as well. So, we've been kind of working with him on a contract basis of, hey, what do you think about this? And it's going to be tough. I'm still not decided on what it's going to be. And so once I get my next 3 games off, which go to file submission in the next week or 2, then I can really focus on the next 3, of which Mike's is one of them. So then I'll be able to fully delve into it. So right now I'm kind of just hanging back and looking at it from a broad view. And that's going to be the biggest challenge. The game is amazing. The gameplay is quick, it's engaging, it's fun. And, if people like Diamonds, if people like games like Red 7, I feel like it's completely inside of that same wheelhouse. And so I feel like it could sell a ton of games. So I have a lot of anxiety actually to not screw it up. Right? I think if you put the wrong theme on this, or maybe it doesn't need a theme, and if you put a theme on it, maybe that screws it up. So I'm going to be really, really careful and methodical about how I handle this. So, and I don't have those answers for you quite yet.
Interesting. Well, I like it better than Diamonds, and I love Diamonds.
Yeah. Oh, that's quite a compliment.
Yeah. No, I do. So I'm really excited. And I played with Mike and Suzanne and Tony from Rolling Dice and Taking Names, and it was interesting talking to Mike afterwards, because we were like, so what are you thinking in terms of name? What are you thinking in terms of theme? What are you thinking? And he's like, you know what? That's not my thing. He's like, I just hand that over and I'm done, and that's going to be Patrick's deal. And so do you find that pretty typical, or do you find that a lot of designers are, they can't let go of their baby?
No, that is not typical. So generally, designers come to me with an existing theme. Mike, for his level of success, that man has an insane level of humility, and that's very I would never want to take advantage of that or exploit it, but I feel that that's a really good quality to have as a designer of, hey, I think, he said, I think this is a Crash Games game. And I confirmed that. I'm like, you're right. And he says, I trust in you and believe in you to do what it is you're good at. And I can't sing that guy's praises enough. I'm a little smitten with him. And it's been really great having that experience with him. And he really approaches this in a good way. He's like, hey, as a designer, I will be whatever level you want me to be hands-on wise. I can be very hands-on if you want, or I can just, completely leave you alone if you want. He's very, very humble in that regard. And it just kind of blew me away, So him trusting me probably has doubled down on my stress and anxiety of not screw this up. But if a designer brings a game to me that has a great theme, like Fish Frenzy, I'm like, no, this is great as that. We don't need to change it. I never want to arbitrarily make a change to a game, whether it be theme or mechanism related, unless I feel it improves the game. I always use Dead Drop as a great example. I didn't touch Dead Drop at all developmentally. Like it was solid. I had with my playtest group, in Tucson at the time, we played around to see if we could stretch it out to a fifth player, and mathematically that was problematic. Mm-hmm. So we tried to do things to it, but we decided at the end of the day that how it was its best version. And so I left it alone. And that's really my job as a developer and a publisher, is to put the best game, forward. And if that means I don't touch it, then that's what that means. This isn't ego for me. This is business. And this is putting the best game into the market. And if that means that I have to do a ton of work to it, or I have to do no work to it, whatever it means, the best game should go forward.
Very cool. I was a Dead Drop backer, by the way, too.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, I love it. I actually like it more than Love Letter. And there's a lot of people that have kind of given me crap for that. But I feel like I'm doing the exact same thing in Love Letter every time I play it. And here, I don't know. I figured out what's in the center, but dang it, I don't have what I have in my hand to actually win the game.
And that's where I feel the beauty of that is it's not just enough to know. You've got to poise and position yourself to be able to have the cards. And I feel like it's just simple enough, but just, varying enough. And somebody, oh gosh, and I can't remember who did this. I had a lot of people that were extremely discerning gamers latch on to it in the beginning. So Matt Loomis, who's really picky, was like, I love this. And Eric Martin, who's super picky, was like, I love this. And that meant a lot to me. And then I had some people come along after that were like, this is a solvable puzzle. I'm like, I don't agree with you.
Yeah.
Because you have the varying behavior of the other people and what they're going to do. And then I think it was like a month or two ago, some insanely intelligent person, far more intelligent than I am, and I'm really sorry that I'm not remembering who did it, posted like this elaborate blog post of why Dead Drop isn't solvable, and approached it from a programming and mathematical perspective, and I was blown away.
Oh, cool.
That's our hobby, right?
Yeah.
We all geek out about things. This person's, geeking out over math. And they were able to explain it. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. I felt like validated. Someone attacked one of my babies and this guy defended it.
Nice.
So, and I'm not afraid to be wrong. I'm wrong plenty, and I will accept when I'm wrong, but I didn't feel that I was wrong in that instance. So it was really kind of validating to have someone prove it in a way that I couldn't. Right.
No, that's really cool. So we're going to kind of start to wrap things up here. We've talked about a little bit about what's going to come out from Crash Games in the near future, but anything that we haven't touched upon that you want to address?
Well, we will have that big announcement coming very soon. And it's probably the biggest announcement that I've ever made. And I'm sorry to be vague, but I promise that it is a huge announcement. And there'll be press releases and everything. But I'm really just excited about the crop of games that we have coming out this year. You know, we have Fish Frenzy from Brett Gilbert coming out in April. We were able to secure the French art from the very talented Vincent Dutrot, who did, you know, Rise of Augustus and Discoveries and Lois and Clark.
Yeah.
We're able to secure that French art, and we'll be re-releasing Yardmaster Express as Backyard Builder's Treehouse. And so that'll be a fantastic game that's coming out in April. And now that I finally have a signed contract, I'm very happy to announce. And I guess I'm doing this on your show as the first formal announcement. So you get a scoop here.
Exclusive.
But I'm very happy to announce that Crash Games has licensed Pi Mal Flammen from Pegasus Spiel.
Oh, cool.
And so the Matthias Kramer card game that debuted at Essen, we will be the licensee of that game here in North America. So that will be available in April as well. It's a fun, like at first I'm like, this is trick taking. I'm like, no, it's not trick taking, and it is a super geeky game, and I love it. And Pegasus Spiel makes some of my favorite games like Istanbul and all that good stuff. And so very excited. That'll be our crop of 3 games that'll actually be debuting at PAX East. Now, Pi Mal Flammen, which we'll be renaming Plums.
Okay.
might not make it from the boat over from Germany because that is manufactured by them. And so that might miss East, but if I can airship a couple cases in, I will certainly do that. So that's going to be our release schedule moving forward, is that people can expect to see Crash Games first releases of the year debut at PAX East, which is an awesome board game convention. They've really embraced tabletop gaming, particularly at East, where, you know, the other one's not as much. South is fastly becoming a good tabletop PAX, and then Essen is as well will be our second kind of crop. So going to that systematic schedule and creating an expectation of when people can expect our new games is super important.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that sounds really exciting. I'm very excited to hear this big announcement. Sounds
dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, sounds great.
People know I can be vague, but I deliver, man.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. Well, I'm trying to think, when can we expect that announcement, do you think?
I don't know. There's a lot of variables. A lot of stuff has been going on behind the scenes, and basically it's just coming down to legalities,
Gotcha.
You know, contracts and lawyers and all that fun stuff.
Lawyers are the worst, man.
I do not dislike lawyers. That's not just because I'm talking to you, Sean. But yeah, no, everything's got to be legal, and that can take some time, and so yeah. Why don't you be my lawyer? No.
Yeah. Hey, I got some big contract bona fides. So, but no, you know, the people who hate lawyers the most are other lawyers. Believe it or not.
I can imagine that. And I know, like, lawyers are just a microcosm of society.
Yeah.
There's good ones, there's bad ones, there's jerk ones, there's happy ones, there's sad ones. There's a rainbow of lawyers.
There you go. Well, Patrick, I want to thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us and to just be very informative. I found this to be a very informative yet entertaining interview.
That's what I try to be. You don't have to be boring and give the information. But I love being on shows and podcasts because I love, you know, letting people know things and being forthcoming. And thanks so much for having me on and making this happen.
Oh, absolutely. So continued success for you and for Crash Games. And I can't wait to hear what else you got coming down the pipe.
Awesome. Can't wait to share it with you.
All right. Thank you, Patrick.